Blackstone Audio presents Borderlines by Archer Mayer. This book is read by Tom Taylorson. Preface. This was perhaps the most difficult entry for me to write in the Gunther series, but not for anything having to do with either research or plotting. What I didn't know at the time is that there's a well-known writer's stumbling block sometimes called the second book blues. In my case, the source of this malaise was the success of Open Season, which had been greeted with such far-flung critical acclaim as to render me, quite ironically, almost mute. I had been left alone for years to toil over Open Season, in utter anonymity. Now everyone wanted to know, what's next? I didn't know. I wanted the action to take place elsewhere in Vermont, to avoid stamping the books as a Brattleboro-only series. Also, there had been a famously unsuccessful police raid on a religious community in the state's notoriously independent Northeast Kingdom, which caught my eye, since there were a number of cults and/or closed groups located in the general area. I began to formulate the idea of Joe going up to the kingdom on special assignment to address some kind of knotty problem. And that's where it began to get tricky. The echoes of Open Season's success kept tugging at my mind, creating the kind of self-doubt that probably every sophomore gets to experience, to a greater or lesser extent. I wrote a long plot treatment, which I never do, and then threw it out. I spent a huge amount of time writing background papers about the cult I'd invented, which I then only rarely consulted. I interviewed countless experts about the vagaries of isolated communities and religious extremists, and the phenomenon of kidnappings masquerading as rescue missions. In other words, I did my best to avoid writing the book. Finally, of course, I caught my breath, recognized what was happening, and took hold of a technique that I practice to this day, which is to let go of many of the guidelines and tried practices that have all but become doctrine, and simply write. It ended up serving me well. In a panic by now, I nevertheless met my deadline, even setting the book's mood by writing the first chapter last, since by then I knew what I was after. I was anointed for my efforts by the reviewer for the LA Times, who specifically commented that I'd leaped that highest of hurdles, the second book.
Chapter 1. I only half saw it at first. A slight movement of brown against brown. I was also far away, so to have noticed it at all was sheer luck. I took my foot off the accelerator and let the car slow down on its own. A glance ahead and into the rearview mirror confirmed.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?